Mochetu. Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. We are already at 200, and that is very good. We are looking forward to learning from each other. Dr. Maua will tell us from her experience, from the evidence and science, but I hope you'll also be able to share in the chat box and also in the Q&A what your concerns are, what you have observed at the workplace. We know there are issues at the workplace that are stressors, and sometimes they lead to alcohol and drug abuse use. We also know that the workplace is a support place. It can be a protective factor. So what is your workplace doing? Is it a risk factor or is it a protective factor for you? During this time of our prevention week, what are you doing as an individual to enforce prevention matters at your workplace? How are you supporting others not to use alcohol and drug abuse? So let's look forward to a wonderful time, to a time of learning together, to a time of just having fun. I'm looking forward to reading the charts. Thank you so much, and I invite Dr. Maua to take us through. Karibu Daktari.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Orlando. And as ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, we are talking about workplace substance use prevention and management. So I hope that we shall learn together. We are the leaders, but you also have the experience. So what are we going to talk about today? We will look at the introduction. What does the data say about workplace? We are going to ask ourselves, why is it important that we actually look at the workplace? And then what are the interventions? And before you leave, what then are going to be your take-home messages? And today, it would be important to ask, then what am I going to do as an individual? So I hope that we are going to work together. And for those who are here for the first time, you can actually introduce yourself in the chat and say, from where are you listening to us? Yeah, in which county? So that we are able to see which counties have been represented here. And so if you are interacting with NACADA for the first time, NACADA actually means the National Authority for the Campaign Against Alcohol and Drug Abuse. So the NACADA of today was actually established by an Act of Parliament on 24th July of 2012. We have a long history, but the one of today was established by an Act of Parliament in 2012, and our big mandate, as you can see, is coordinate a multi-sectoral public campaign to do three things. There is prevention, there is control, and then there is mitigation on the impact of alcohol and drug abuse in Kenya. And as you are aware, that even the president brought out the issue of this being a menace, and we are going to see how does the workplace look like. So in NACADA, we look at these under three thematic areas. That is public education and advocacy. And that is why we are here. So we create awareness, we do sensitizations, and whatever we do is aimed at behavior change. That is why I'm asking, by the end of this session, what is going to be your take home? What is it that you're going to do for your own workplace? Then, in terms of control, then we now have compliance and enforcement. And this has to do with, now that we have regulations like Mutudo law, is it even being implemented? Yeah, so that is why we have regulation, we have monitoring, we have accountability in this area. Then we cannot do, if we talk about what is evidence-based, we cannot do it without research. So we have the research, we have the standards and the licensing. And so you can see In this area, we provide data and evidence, and I will share with you just a bit of what we have. There is so much to be done because we usually have a full-fledged training on this. Now, when it comes to standards, you may have heard of even rehabilitation facilities. There are standards, and therefore, together with the enforcement team, occasionally there is a survey to just see are they complying with the requirements. Because if we aim to mitigate on the impact, then it means that there has to be quality. And therefore, we also have quality assurance being done in that thematic area. So, as I've mentioned, our core function, public education, and we deliver this either directly, as I'm doing now, or in collaboration with other agencies and partners. And so, as you are here, because you are drawn from various institutions, yeah, mainly it is public sector institutions. But we also have private sector institutions today in this particular forum. So that means we reach you either directly or in collaboration, meaning you can organize such kind of sensitizations or education forums. Even as we speak in this from yesterday through to Friday, that is what is happening. There is a heightened conversation around this. We also have interagency collaboration because there are so many other players who are involved in alcohol and drug demand reduction. We have KRA, we have KEBS, we have anti-counterfeit authority, we have the county government, we have the police. So there are so many people who are involved, and therefore we do interagency coordination, bringing all these various agencies together. So you may have heard in government, they talk of multi-agency approach. So it means that we need to speak in one language. The other is on the aspect of policy, law, and action plans, and therefore we coordinate development, implementation, enforcement, and even monitoring. And some of you may have already engaged with us in this. Research, I've already said, is very key. And we not only just conduct, we promote, and we coordinate. So, whereas we do 5-year surveys, we also do specific ones like targeting the schools, yeah, secondary, primary, workplace. It means that we actually serve as the national data repository. So it means that if you are doing research, especially on issues of drugs, you should be getting to NACADA website because that is where it is. And I've seen sometimes people provide very old research and then they are quoting NACADA. So if you are talking of 2017, we already have the 2022. And in 2027, we will be doing another 5-year survey. So you should be updated by actually going to our website because that is where you are going to find the policy briefs, you are going to find the journal that we also support in production. County government plays a very big role because when it comes to even licensing of the various website, the various outlets, it's actually the work of the county government. So you see, as every 5 years we find new governors who come with different approaches. So it means that we consistently work with the county governments so that they can develop policies, laws, and action plans in line, particularly with the issues of alcohol. We are also required to submit biannual reports to the two houses of parliament through our cabinet secretary, because we inform the nation in terms of what is it that is being done, what are the challenges, and so on. So it means that if you are here and you don't get to report what you are doing, whether it is at institutional level or it is at even CBOs, NGOs, you're all expected to give your reports, especially those we have trained, we have taken through the National Alcohol and Drug Use Prevention System, where we actually do reporting. Yeah. The other thing is, as I've said, most of the people who are on this call are people from public sector institutions. I know that there are some people who continue to report, meaning that they are doing some work, but some of us stopped doing because it is not under the PC anymore. So that means that we were probably doing it because it was in the PC. If it is not in the PC, then we don't do it. But when you look at the data that I'm just showing here, I'm just making a comparison of some of the researches that we have done previously. The question you should be asking yourself, now that your institution stopped implementing what we had been doing before it was removed from performance contracting, has the problem stopped growing in your workplace, or it has continued to probably get worse? So what I'm presenting here, like I've said, we are a repository. So we have a whole survey that was done for universities in 2024, the national survey, which was done in 2022. Our focus is on workplace, which was done in 2020. But remember that during implementation, every institution was supposed to do their own survey so that you get the picture. How does my own workplace look like? Then we have the secondary and the primary. So it even tells you that some of these segments, we now need to do follow-up surveys, like for the primary and even for the secondary. Now let us look at how the picture looks like. Prevalence of first month use, it means that these are active users. And so, whereas we think that drug use is most prevalent in our universities, you can actually see that when it comes to alcohol, the workplaces lead. So it's not the youth, the workplaces lead. What does that tell us? That if we don't address the issue, or if we stop addressing the issue because it's not in the performance contract, we are not helping our own colleagues. But of course, if you look at tobacco, you can see even the prevalence of 4.8% is high, but you can see universities. Yeah. And that is because when we talk of tobacco products, there are novel products that have come in, the lift, yeah, and the e-cigarettes, the vaping, and so on. All those, then contribute because the people who are targeted are usually young people. So that means that if you are a parent in the workplace and your child is in the university, then it means they are highly vulnerable. Look at Mira, Muguka, Mira, if we have a high prevalence at the university, but even at the workplace, because remember that we sampled various public sector workplaces. Now, when it comes to, I usually call it Wajakoya matters, yeah? Yes, you can see that because probably the university is the more recent research, Maybe if we do a follow-up in the workplace, then how does cannabis use look like? When you look at heroin use at the university, it may be 1.7%, but 0.8% is rather high even for a workplace. If you look at cocaine, even that, because the general population is actually less than 1%. So it tells you what it actually looks like in our own workplace. Then, when we talk about prescription drugs, we are talking about non-medical use of prescription drugs, the ones that are prone to abuse. So again, when you have 1% at the workplace, but one thing that you also need to be worried as a parent, if you look at the secondary and the primary, you can see that their use of prescription drugs is much higher. So what then is happening in that area, right? So today, even as we focus on the workplace, just remember that there is a way that what happens in the workplace also impacts. And because we are parents or prospective parents, what happens in the primary, the secondary, and even university is something that we need to be aware of, because if you are at the workplace, it is a place where you also have an opportunity to receive education, as we are doing now, so that it helps you with also the parenting bit of things. Now, the other challenge that we have is the disorders that come as a result of this. And this is coming from the 2022 survey. And you can see the challenge. You could ask yourself, in which region am I stationed? What does it look like? Yeah, because alcohol use is the bigger challenge that we have. And I hope you can see that even Coast region has a higher problem of alcohol use disorders compared to even the heroin. Yeah, they would have the higher prevalence when it comes to heroin use. But what is the bigger problem? You should be asking yourself. If you look at Western, if you are from Nyanza, what are the issues that are coming up? Yeah. So because today we are focusing on the workplace, I was trying to bring to your mind. If you want more information on this, you get to our website because all these studies are there. Yeah. We even have a abridged version so that you don't have to read the bigger one. But this gives you a reason why, even when the president talks about the issues, then what exactly are we talking about? So here we have workplaces, and in the chart, I don't know which one you can identify with. Which are the workplaces represented in this session today? Because they are various. Let me see what is coming up in the chart in terms of, I can see people are reporting where they are at, but yes, what then? Which are the workplaces that you can see here? You can see the school, and many of you are from the school setup. Your classes may not be as congested as the one shown here. So think about how it is impacting the teacher, the lecturer. If your classes are small, you must be one of the lucky ones. If you're at university, how big is that hall that you are actually doing your lectures? Yeah, I can see the financial. Yeah, we have technical, we have Juakali. I hope you can see Juakali. Yeah. So that is why I was saying that in today's session, we could be a mix, not just public sector alone, because Many of us now are working on our laptops, and you can see how that also has a way of, even the way you bend on it and work like that the whole day, there is a way it is going to impact on you. If you are a tea picker, as you can see, or you are a farmer, in whatever kind of context you work, there are also challenges, specific challenges that come from there. This one that you may be wondering, what does this event look like? Yeah. Yes, Juakali. Yes, I can see somebody has identified institutions of learning and even Juakali. Now think of that Juakali person. Yeah. If I'm in Nairobi, I pass through the Grogan area, and you see people who are in their overalls waiting for customers. How does the workplace even impact their substance use, and even the one who is doing tailoring? Because we also have technical institutions here who are training people so that eventually they can be doing the job that this lady is doing. So why then is it impossible? Is it important for us to talk about the workplace? And you'll find that this is where we spend the most part of our lives. Whether you are in the formal, and many people who are here are in the formal sector, or you are in informal. Yeah. So whether you work in Juakali, you are those are the ones called the hustlers. If you are hustling there, whether you are doing it online or you have to meet customers, you have some shop where you are selling your goods, or you are out there banging, 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 so that you can make all these wonderful things that we do. So we actually spend the longest part of our lives in the workplace. The other thing is, whatever happens in the workplace, it is also intersecting with key life transitions. Look back. If you are married, at what point did you get married? It's probably when you are already working. And I've seen young people who ask themselves, oh, so if you have started a family, how are you going to manage? Do you have a job? It is also the time, the period where you become a parent. And if you have worked long enough, like somebody like me who is approaching retirement, it is also the part at which you retire. So you can see, I started off as a person who was single in the early 20s, got married when I'm in the workplace, has become a parent in the workplace, and will probably also retire from this workplace. So you can see all these life transitions, there is a way it impacts or intersects with our own workplaces. We also know that the workplace is the one that is driving the economy. Livelihoods are dependent on workplaces, whether it is formal or informal. Community well-being is also dependent on the workplace, because whatever happens in the workplace, there is a way it impacts also the community well-being and also economic growth. Now, the other thing, again, is Carol Kanana, I can see your hand is up. Just put it in the chat. There will be sessions for questions. But you can, if you have questions right now, put them in the Q&A, and Rita will help with responding to them. So the workplace is also going to shape the new experiences, norms, and behaviors. If you get to the workplace and kuna baada ya kazi, yeah, those are norms that you create, so that on Friday, which is Friday, or in the evenings, as we are waiting to go home, what are we doing? Do we pass by the bar, the wines and spirits, or what is it that we are doing so that we begin to develop some behaviors that probably we did not have. Maybe even at college, you never got to experience substance use. Then you come to the workplace, and the workplace people are telling you, unaenda nyumbani mapema, kwani wewe ndio unapika leo? Uko kwa program ya kupika, ama umekaliwa chapati and all those things. You see, that becomes part of the workplace environment that begins to introduce stress, pressure, and risks because of what your own colleagues begin to tell you. Yeah. So in as much as the workplace gives us income, it gives us an identity. Many times when people introduce themselves, they will say, I'm Dr. Maua and I work in NACADA. You see, it's giving me an identity. But you also have to be aware that when it comes to after you retire or you leave for some reason, your identity should not be as much as so, intertwined with your work, even though the workplace provides stability and even social networks, but it also provides risks, pressures. And so I will talk about some of the workplace stressors that we saw from the 2020 survey. Heavy workload with unrealistic deadlines. Some of you can resonate with that. Disruptions. Those who work in the formal environment, instances where we are told, you're given a call and told, please come to the boardroom. Kuna nini we kuja tu? Yeah. So allocation of vertical or ad hoc assignments. Some of you can relate with that. Pressure from customers due to unresolved complaints. Yeah. Even if you are a worker who makes, let's say, furniture or even clothing, yeah, or even clothing, you design clothing, you know that there is going to be pressure from customers due to unresolved complaints. You said you are going to deliver, you haven't delivered. Yeah. If you are in the workplace, they are customers because there is always customer care. So the moment you see that call, you're asking yourself, now what do I tell this customer? Then there is lack of management support, which includes unfair promotion and rewards, because sometimes it is a wonder that the ones who don't perform are the ones who get promoted. But the ones who are working, you ask yourself, so for what reason am I doing this? Why am I doing this? These are stressors that came from the survey. The teamwork, when we are not working as a team, and poor employee relationships, that contributes. Lack of recognition and reward for hard work. You may have seen hospitals, hotels, sometimes they have employee of the week. That is actually recognition for the hard work that the person is doing. Now, when we talk of financial challenges, payslip owners are the sufferers this time round, and therefore we experience a lot of financial challenges, including the fact that we are being reminded that NSSF is going to increase in this month of February. So at the end of the month, we expect less money. Yeah. So that is going to be a challenge. It's already constrained by housing levy and SHA and so on. Then lack of work-life balance. If you are always working, whether you are in Juakali or you are in the formal setting, yeah, is it just work, and you never have time to rest? Yeah. So time to rest is also something that needs to be scheduled. It's not an afterthought. It needs to be scheduled. Sometimes you have sudden organizational changes. Either your organization has been merged with another, this was scam, there is political pressure and interference. We know of reports that were coming where you hear that politicians are issuing letters, TSC letters, that is a stressor, because then people ask, how are politicians even getting? I'm basing this on the reports that are there that were coming out, as reported in the media. Inadequate equipment, that could also be a challenge. Network, power outages, those could also be part of the challenges that people express, and therefore it stresses you because you still need to meet your deadline. Micromanagement, you have given me the work, but you don't give me time to do it because you also want to be doing it. You have given me, but you are also doing it. That was also reported as a stressor. And sometimes, imagine there are people who don't know what they are doing, particularly when you have young people, the youthful workforce, those who are recruiting young people. If there is no clarity or guidance on the assignments, it becomes a stressor. And for the millennials, they will say, "Oh, when you think that they are doing it, in actual sense, it's not being done." So by the time you expect results, they say, "Actually, I did not even understand what you wanted." Media transfers, which affect performance, and some of us can relate with that, where you just have sudden transfers, it happens. Now we move to risk factors. Those ones were stressors. There are many more, but ask yourself, what are the stressors in my own workplace? Now, when it comes to risk factors, look at number one, it is peer pressure and a bad company. The ones who say, "Are you on duty? And that is why you are going home early." Yeah. You can't do this job. You can't do this job with just your head like that. Mhm. We have actually trained workplaces where part of their findings is actually showing that there is peer pressure to use drugs. You are not using drugs, but then the kind of work that you're doing, the people you find there already tell you, "Hii kazi huwezi fanya tu hivyo. Lazima, you must do something," so that it clouds your thinking. Lack of financial management skills. Now we need it more than ever. Yeah. So our workplaces need to provide that. Lack of career progression is something that people are stuck in the same position. That is a risk factor. And especially if there is no reward, and then you find the ones who are not performing are the ones who actually get promoted, that can be a reason to remember what your peers are saying, how drugs will actually help you. And then there is also mistreatment by management. Remember, I'm reading for you findings from the 2020 survey. And then failure to get permission to proceed on leave. So you have the leave has been approved, but at the same time, you're being given work. But on the flip side, we also found out that in some organizations, you have leave, but then you say, "Nimeenda leave lakini niko available." Kama kuna trip, just know that I'm available. So on the one side, you may not be given leave, but on the other, what are you doing? Then the domestic and family related problems. Yeah. Remember, we said that there is an intersection. It is when you are at the workplace that you actually get married, that you become a parent. So domestic and family related problems are going to be a risk factor for substance use. If your workplace does not have mechanism for identifying those who are using and therefore begin to experience problems, that is also a risk factor. It is also a risk factor when your employees, whether informal or informal, they don't have the information or knowledge on the effects of alcohol and drug abuse. They are using it to cope, but they don't know how it actually impacts them. If you're working away from family, so that in the evening you are a loner, because For example, right now I'm in Mombasa and my family is in Nairobi. So it means that I have the whole evening to myself. What am I doing with my evening? Am I alone or am I suffering from loneliness? If that becomes a challenge, I can always remember, uh, see, kuna wines and a little alcohol is good for your infirmities. Are you seeing how walking away from family can become a risk factor? Then, if you are already using the stigmatization of employees with ADA problems, yeah, Kalewa, yule mlevi, you know, the moment you call people by the conditions they have, that is stigma. And then for those of us here who are in the workplace, per diem is an issue. If you are on per diem over and over and over, it means you are as good as working away from family, and then in the evening you also have extra income. How are you using it? The thing is the fact that your evenings, if you are with family, then you say, I'm going back to family. But after you have done your work and you're in the evening alone, then what are you doing? Yeah. So that becomes an area that we need to also be unfair distribution of work-related assignments. Sometimes you find somebody is assigned only, let's say, for example, I'm in Mombasa. I am only given work that is around Mombasa. But then there are people who are always assigned jobs that then takes them somewhere where they can get that per diem. That is an issue. Yeah, it's a risk factor for substance use. Then a lack of strong mentorship programs. And I've already mentioned that if you have a youthful workforce, which you can see is also a risk factor, and then the organization does not have any mentorship programs, then that becomes a loophole. Yeah, because you have young people, they are new in the workspace. You give them work, there is no clarity in terms of the work that is assigned, then that becomes a challenge. Then we also have lack of proper placement of employees as per their qualifications. Yeah. So I am trained as a psychologist. Then you put me in customer care. Well, customer care, I would still do because as a psychologist, we already have things which are close to that. Yeah. But just think of that, and then you take me to become what? Finance, for example. Yeah. I don't have the qualification, and yet you have placed me there. The thing is, it's going to be a stressor because I'm going to make so many mistakes. I'm going to make so many mistakes because I am uh, not placed in the right place. Then, if your workplace has no clear policies on management of alcohol and drug abuse, that becomes also a problem because now if you have people who already have developed problems, because HRs who are here, you know that when you hire people, you actually don't check, do they have a substance use problem? Yeah. To what level are they drinking? What drugs are they using? We never ask. And then probably right from the onset, you have somebody with problem behavior. So if it is not clear how to handle that, it also becomes a problem for the workplace. If you are going to make alcohol available during workplace related events, that is a risk factor because you expect that employees who are drinking then can drink unless you intend to see the worst of your employees' behavior. That is when you're going to put it there. And then, should I eventually develop a problem because the workplace offers alcohol, can you dismiss me? And the workplace is the one that has contributed. I've already mentioned the youthful workforce and the fact that they require mentorship. Otherwise, remember the youthful workforce, you live only once. They are the YOLO group. You live only once, and therefore, the way they are going to approach things is also very, very different. Then there is the fear of unknown due to changes. And I'm sure some of you may be, now that we have SHA, yeah, we have SHA, there was an issue with those who are working under NHIF. There are some who have solved, but you just remain there, and there is no way to even lodge a complaint and so on. And a number of institutions have actually experienced that. Yeah, we've already talked about the biased promotion, which leads to low motivation. Remember, it was a stressor and it is also a risk factor. Regular transfers is also a risk factor because if somebody continues to move away from their family, it actually becomes a risk factor for substance use. And that is also common in public sector institutions. So, if you are going to make alcohol available in your workplace events like end of year party, when there is a launch of something, and so on, it means that you are actually promoting, have a workplace culture that promotes alcoholism. You're actually providing it. And therefore, the other thing that will come as a result is poor interpersonal relationships in the workplace. So we are not working as a team. Yeah. And there is a saying that wearing the same uniform does not make you a team. So interpersonal relationships, that is also going to be a problem. Freda, if you have an issue, just put it on the chat, or you will wait for the time when we give a chance to talk. So now look at how the stressors and the workplace. You can see there is the aspects of job security. Even those of us who are in informal, yeah, you have your own business. Business is not doing well. Yeah, companies have been closing in this country. That is a stressor because the people who are working there, those who were who are supported by US, whether it is US aid or any US funded, then Trump comes in and says, mm-mm. So there are those ones who lost their jobs immediately, but there are those you are only clear in this program or you have 1 month and that's it. So that is an issue of job security. If you are in NHIF versus moving to SHA, that is job security. Then there is inadequate salary. I don't know when salary is ever inadequate. The physical demands and discomfort of your work, working for long hours and overwork. There are those of us who it seems as if we are working in the emergency. So if you are in emergency mode all the time, that becomes a stressor. The workplace hazards, there are those who work in noisy places. Remember Juakali, for them to develop that beautiful thing that you appreciate at the end, what have they gone through to have it? Talk of even carpenters, the fact that they're even using glue, that is part of a hazard. Before you think about the hazards in your own workplace. Then there is aggression, violence, and harassment at the workplace. If you're working in isolation, that is a stressor, and work family conflicts, which you have already saw. So those are just part of the workplace stressors. Now, that translates to negative emotions. We have a lot of angry people at the workplace. There is very little you can do about the fact that, in fact, there is nothing that you can do about the fact that at the end of this month, you're going to get less money, courtesy of NSSF deductions. So you have angry people. There is frustration, stress, hopelessness, and many other negative emotions and even tensions. that come. Now, imagine that contributes to substance use. So when you remember you spend the longest time of your life at the workplace, you are constantly on heightened negative emotions, you are very likely to use substances, whether it is alcohol or any other. But the most common is alcohol. So substance use becomes a coping strategy to mitigate the negative emotions that result from exposure to workplace stress. So ask yourself, how then do we deal with this? And you see, that is why it's important that you do your workplace survey so that you are able to identify what are the stressors. And that is what you need to deal with because it is contributing to the negative emotions. The fact that people are not working as a team. Yeah. So those are part of the negative emotions, and therefore you're likely to see an increase in substance use, and you know how it also correlates with mental health. Why then does it matter? So whether you are working in the office setting or you are working in Juakali, and then think about the ones in Matatu, yeah, always with very loud music and banging of the very Matatu, and so you would understand why sometimes customer care becomes an issue with them. Yeah, you may see aggression, but it is also the nature of the work. So why is it that it matters? The negative impact of drug use in the workplace, one has to do with the workers themselves. Then there is increased risk for death and disability through accidents, diseases. You've heard of mental health disorders, violent interactions. When you find that somebody cannot cope so that they actually either shoot themselves dead or shoot their family, kill their family, and then kill themselves, or you find somebody like remember the construction worker who the construct not even the construction worker he owned a construction company and he goes to KRA and he just can't deal with it. So instead, what does he do? Jump off. That had to do with, the mental stress that the person has gone through. So that has to do with the workers. Then you come to the workplace itself. When you have absenteeism and also presenteeism, absenteeism, the person is missing in action. Hajakuja kazini. Presenteeism, they are available at the workplace, but there is no work going on. So if you're doing a head count, they are there, but there is nothing that is going on. You expect reduced productivity if people are using drugs. You expect lack of trustworthiness. If you have a fundi, you know, whether he's very good at making clothes, but he's also using drugs, you really are you don't know whether to stick with him or her as a good fundi or you should look elsewhere because once you made the payment you can even sell the very material that you took there. Then the increased health costs and potential impact on the institution's reputation. Yeah, because if you're an institution and you or your employees are known to actually drink there, particularly when you go out and you're drinking as a team, what kind of name do you eventually end up with in that place? Yeah. If you are the chafua meza kind of people and you are sitting in one place, you are Nakada staff, muna chafua meza. It's even worse if you are from Nakada because you say, even in Nakada people drink. Nakada is a workplace like any other. Yeah. So you expect to see the same kind of things, right? Then families are also affected. marital conflict is going to increase because we are using drugs. Domestic violence, economic instability, because the little money, we've already said there is a problem. The payslip is constrained, but the little money that is found is also being used on drugs. That becomes a challenge. Then for women, when you drink and you are pregnant, the baby is also drinking. And that is why we end up with the fetal alcohol syndrome and even HIV. It is even worse for your partner, yeah, for your spouse. So as you speak of that spouse being a typewriter, after you have drunk, it's kelele, 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 kelele. There are psychological consequences. Yeah. There may be the aspect of denial, or they want to protect you so that if you did not come to work, they are the ones who are giving the excuse that you don't want to believe that it's actually happening to you. And so you are also likely to have anger, stress, anxiety, hopelessness. And usually, sometimes even after a session like this, somebody reaches out and say, now what do I do? What do I do? One, to you, if you have also, now you have what we call co-occurring disorders. You are not just using alcohol, but now you also have another mental health disorder. Your partner is also affected, yeah, because personal health is going to be affected. It is also shameful, yeah, to say how my wife or my husband is dependent on alcohol or is now dependent on drugs. We don't call them addicts. They have a substance use disorder. Yeah. So that is for the family. What about the children? The children also suffer. You can imagine if you are the village drunk, like now, teachers have, you already live in the community. So you can imagine you are drunk and people know you are the village drunk, or you come to class when you are intoxicated. How does it impact the children? They are so embarrassed that the one lying in the ditch is my father or is my mother. So there are guilt feelings of responsibility for parental behavior. And sometimes when you are in conflict, you're also quarreling among each other and saying, yes, I did not even want to have those children. And the children can hear you. So I am the mistake. I am the mistake. And therefore, it is my fault that my parents are quarreling. It's my fault that my father is drinking more because he did not want me. That means that the children will lack trust for other adults. They have an increased risk for substance use because substance use itself runs in families, as we are going to see shortly. They will have adjustment problems, depression, anxiety, low self-esteem. Remember, we already looked at that on Friday when we were looking at how does this impact adolescents. Your children then take adult roles in the family. Yeah. So now, instead of being children, they are the ones who become the adults, and yet you are present. And I know in the last meeting, somebody asked, so what about parentified children? That is, those become then the psychological consequences because the child then begins to take the role of the parent. Yeah. So you can see, it's not just on you, the individual, it affects the workplace, it impacts the other people who are within the workplace, and it is also going to impact what is happening at home. So you see, this has far-reaching effects. So now let us look at interventions. So your workplace needs to have all this. You need to have universal programs. Yeah. As you can see, universal is green. It is for mainly the non-users. Even the non-users have a potential to become future users. I may not be using now, but I may end up with an illness or because of the psychological impact that it's having on me, because my spouse is a user, it means that I may, I may start using, but most are non-users, and we are going to see shortly. The selective, in the workplace, you already have people who are highly at risk. If it is in the Juakali, the ones who are doing woodwork and must use glue, you can see how they are predisposed if you're smelling the glue all the time. That is a person who is at risk. In our workplaces, the drivers may be at risk because if they take you to a place, they sit out there doing nothing. It could also be if you are already, your own spouse is using, that may also predispose you. Indicated population means these are already people who are using. Baada ya kazi, they can always be taking one or two, including one for the road. And over time, it becomes more than one for the road. And so you can see in the workplace, we must have treatment, return to work, and relapse prevention. So it means that we need all this. I've already mentioned prevention, universal, selective, indicated. Now for treatment, what you see is not what you get. You may be seeing somebody who comes intoxicated. They may just be coping with another mental health disorder that they have. That is why you see in treatment, there must be case identification so that somebody is treated for the disorder that they have. And when they leave rehab, and these are some questions that people usually ask, does rehab work? Yeah, because we assume that when somebody has come from rehab, then now they are well. They are on a journey. Yeah, recovery is a journey, and therefore we also need relapse prevention, and that's why we have maintenance. It's not over after somebody has come from treatment. You cannot say the person is now recovered. Why are they relapsing again? Yeah, because then it is a journey. So I have said in the universal, we are targeting the entire institution. And when you target the entire institution, it includes the workers, it includes the family, it includes the community. That is why we talk about CSR. Yeah? That community, some of the institutions not only have a workplace, but they also have estates. For example, if you work in pipeline, you have estates. If you work in KRA, you have estates. If you work in KPA, you have, and many others. Even our own institutions, you may be teaching there, but you also have residences that are owned by the institution. You have the staff institution. So it means that if let's say your college or university or institution has the staff quarters, you see, your family is already staying within the institution. And therefore, eventually you create a community within that place. So that is why you can see the first thing that we need to have is the workplace policy. And during training, which I'm going to say at the end, during training, the workplace policy, even if you did not have, we begin by drafting one so that eventually you can have a workplace policy, because then it shows who are you covering? Are you covering the workers, the family? What are you doing in the community? Yeah. And some of the institutions I have dealt with during training even say, we also have our public education and advocacy that we do in the community. So you see, you also have a role to provide prevention education to, if your customers, or you do public education and awareness in your community or with your target audience, it means that you may also add wellness and prevention education. Yeah. So that has to do with awareness, skills, healthy choices, which needs to be in our workplaces. And you can see it is also important that there is social support because we have seen the workplace, we have social networks. So how do we build strong networks in the workplace? Not networks for drinking, but networks where we can actually support one another. Because if I work closely with you, I'm likely to be the first person to know that you have a drinking problem, that you seem to have marital conflicts at home, and it is affecting your work. Yeah. So it means that when you build strong networks, you can actually be the one to support the people you work closely with rather than covering up for them. So you can see employee education is very key. Yeah. You must educate your employees about the policy. Um, you don't get what do we call them, consultant to do the policy, and then you say now we have an ADA policy. See, Nakada said we need an ADA policy. Now we have one, and nobody knows what is inside. So part of education includes what does the policy say? Not for punishment purposes, but for creating awareness. Because in the policy, you're also indicating what kind of services are available for your employees. You also need to educate your employees on the impact of drugs on the individuals and even in the workplace, just like we have seen. And even employee rights and responsibilities. They have a responsibility towards the workplace. But we also appreciate that because at the workplace is where we get married, we become parents, and so on, it means that we also experience problems that come with being in the same workplace. So, what are my rights and responsibilities? And then, what kind of support is available? Yeah, the EAP is Employee Assistance Program. What is it that is available for me? So in prevention education, you will discuss then the specific types of drugs used in the workplace. And you can only do this if you have done the research so that you know what is the status within my own workplace. And some of the institutions here are already institutions of higher learning, or even within your institution, you already have a research department or component. The research tool is already, the survey tool is already on our website. So it means you can even do the research in-house. Yeah. So what are the key issues in your workplace? What are the signs and symptoms of substance use, misuse, abuse, and how does it impact the workplace? Those are some of the things that you must discuss. And of course, you will add even things like mental wellness. Yeah, because when we talk of wellness, it means that we are also thinking about the mental health. Now let's move to that group that are vulnerable or are at risk. It could be job related. Yeah. Remember, we talked about the stress, we've talked of the hazards. That could be the reason. It could be the workplace and personal risk factors. So you can see we are targeting the vulnerable. From your survey, you will be able to identify which is the most vulnerable group in my workplace. Maybe you can see with your eyes, but you know that is not evidence-based. So we are targeting the individual worker and it is extended to the co-workers. Because if, for example, you have a driver who is intoxicated and he or she is transporting stuff, the co-workers are at risk because of the driver's actions. But when you say gari inajua nyumbani, then you know how well you are putting yourself at risk when you have an intoxicated driver. And I have handled some of the institutions in training where they have a driver. There was one case, I will not mention the institution, there was one case where the driver was was actually intoxicated that the vehicle had to be taken to the police station. The guy cannot even see, and that is the driver. So the key strategies here is confidential screening. Is this person just having a drinking problem, or there is more to the drinking? Yeah. So from the screening, you will be able to do that. And now the employee assistance program, where you have counseling, you have referral, and you have recovery support. More details usually comes in the training. And I would then like to speak about employee assistance program, because sometimes people don't even know that what you are offering is already an EAP. It's a confidential support for employees and work-related challenges. If you are in a college or university, it's not just the employees, but also the students. The students are also part of the EAP. And that is why you usually have chaplains, you have the dean's office, or those who are in charge of student welfare. So if you are in a college or university, it's not just the workers, but you must also factor in the students. So what kind of services are applied? Yeah. Are those services internal? Are you utilizing a medical service, or is it hybrid? And even those who are in informal, if you're here, I can see people are raising their hands. Just put it in the chat or wait until we come to the Q&A session, which will be coming. Yeah. So the question that you ask yourself is, did you know that SHA is also covering issues of treatment? Because many people who contribute to SHA don't even know. So whether you are informal or in informal, you need to find out which are the treatment facilities that are, SHA accredited, and they are available on an NACADA website. That is why, remember I said there is the standards and the licensing. Once they have done their work, then eventually the accredited facilities are posted on our website. So what kind of services are available under the EAP? There is counseling. There is also psychiatric assistance. And many times, even when you have a medical cover, you talk of maternity, you talk of optical, you talk of pediatric, but you never mention to staff about the counseling, the psychiatrics, the psychiatrists that you have on board, yeah, which are the outpatient and inpatient facilities. Where do we have aftercare support? Because aftercare support for relapse prevention is part of EAP. So that if you have employees who have gone for treatment and they come back, they need to continue in aftercare or support groups, which is actually also, by the time they leave the treatment facilities, or even if it is outpatient, they should be able to be guided on what is available. So I hope now we understand that whatever you are offering, even if it is students, you must be having counselors. You have counselors. They probably pay for medical. What does medical cover? Yeah. So other than, I don't know if some institutions may have a resident nurse or a resident clinicians. So how does this link to the services that are available out there? So those are employee assistance programs. So whether you are in informal sector or formal sector, remember SHA is part of what is covered. So in the employee assistance program, what are some of the things that are available? Dedicated helpline, like NACADA runs the 1192. That is where you can begin to get help, because wherever you are, you can always call 1192. Assessment and referrals, because when you call 1192, I believe there is identification and even linkage to care. So that would you be okay with an outpatient or would you need inpatient? But assessment must always be done because remember I said what you see is not what you get. But we also have short-term counseling, which we call brief interventions, solution focused. That is part of the EAP crisis management so that you are dealing with critical incidents. Yeah, critical incidents include, for example, a driver who comes, he has a drinking problem, but you also don't know that he has another mental health issue. And then he says, "Aki siku moja nitaua mtu." And it has happened. Yeah, it has happened where the people who have been driven have been rammed, and when they ram into maybe a vehicle ahead of you, they ensure, and you know how we like sitting back left, they target the back left, not their side. Yeah, so it will look like an accident, and this has happened in our own institutions. What I am saying here is what has been shared even during trainings. So when that person says, one of these days I will kill somebody, especially if you're a supervisor, beware that sometimes we want to kill you several times. But if somebody voices or they come intoxicated, like in the case of the driver that I was telling you, I was shown the picture. He can't even lift his head. How that's a critical incident. How do you deal with that? That person who is threatening to kill themselves is actually a critical incident. So how are you handling such kind of a crisis? And more often than not, it is the HRs that handle this. Then there's one-on-one support, yeah, which is you will find in either the medical service or the counseling or the psychiatric assistant that is there, the wellness coaching, so that here we are talking about prevention, yeah, behavior change, which is very close to the solution focused. And then the issue of confidentiality. Confidentiality and privacy is such a big issue that in some of the institutions that we've trained, people in HR have also been found not to be confidential people. Even though they say sometimes people who come to the office are able to read documents upside down. So as they are talking to you, they are also screening what is in front of you. How do you handle confidential information? Yeah, because if that is done, then you find people will not access the services because it is as good as announcing to everyone. Yeah. Remember the drinking, maybe what you see, but then there's another mental health disorder. And then say, oh, unajua fulani amechizi. No wonder, amechizi. Yeah. Are you able to keep confidentiality? The other group that has also been found not to keep and should be keeping confidential information is counselors. So those two, and that is why if you have a residential counselor, you may find that people are not going for that service because of confidentiality issues. Now, when it comes to analysis and reporting, you have these services. What is the utilization? What are people presenting with as they go to hospital? Because we also have non-communicable diseases that are related to alcohol use, for example, or drug use. So, are people presenting more with this kind of illnesses? Yeah, because that should actually help you to identify what are some of the challenges that then you would also be experiencing. So what are the challenges with EAPs? Because EAPs may exist, but they are underutilized by employees. And why? Number one, employees don't know the EAP exists because it may be provided, but the focus is on maternity, is on optical, is on outpatient, is on, but it never mentions these other areas that are targeting mental health, which includes substance use disorders. Employees perceive stigma that is associated with seeking counseling. So, how do you destigmatize that? Supervisors who are enablers. We have supervisors who are enablers. They don't refer employees to the EAP. Probably they also don't know what is in the EAP. And that is why part of what we do is training for managers and supervisors so that they understand what are you supposed to do with regards to somebody who is presenting with problem behavior or with substance use. Employees also fear presenting themselves that they have a problem. They say, kumbe uko na shida, or now unakubali uko na shida. So when they present themselves, remember, if you provide this also in the policy, yeah, so you are not collecting data to punish the employee. So those are part of the reasons why EAP is actually underutilized. It is available, but employees are not using. So ask yourself, do your employees even know that SHA takes care of that SHA takes care of substance use disorders? Yeah. Even if you're in the informal sector, do your employees know? If you're a supervisor, are you covering for your employee, or would you also want to help? It is even worse when it is the supervisor with a problem. Yeah. What if the supervisor is the one with the problem? Those are questions that we also asked, and we are going to see shortly. So we are aiming at helping people, not punishing. In any case, firing somebody is such a long process. And that is why you see sometimes they may be having a problem. You try to fire them, you did not follow procedures, they go to the labor courts, they even get awarded. Yeah. So that is a challenge. Now we go to indicated strategies. Indicated is now for those who are using. Yeah. So the substance using workers and their families. And you can see confidential assessment and referral. And this is done by somebody who is qualified, not the HR. You're not the one doing assessment. Even if you have been trained as in counseling and whatever, it is not you. Yeah. So when it's identified, then the person can be referred. And remember, even outpatient works. The brief interventions I've already talked about, the short solution focused counseling to reduce risk. Remember now, they are using but not dependent. Using but not yet dependent. That is why we are talking about how do you begin to reduce the risk. If I am a daily drinking officer, how do I reduce the risk, right? Then we have the treatment. Now, those who have problems. How do we address those who have problems? Then employees who are in need of or undergoing treatment. You can see again, confidential treatment. Yeah. So that in as much as you may be paying for it, how much information reaches the finance office so that they make payments. So inpatient and outpatient. It's not always inpatient. I know many times we are stuck on inpatient, but even outpatient just works. Return to work policies. It needs to be clear in your policy. What happens after somebody has gone for treatment? How do they reintegrate back? And then there is the aspect of relapse prevention. Ongoing support. Ongoing support may mean that because I still need to go for my counseling session or my AA meeting, then I am given permission. I am stepping out. We meet on Wednesday afternoons. So allow me to go for the support group meeting or whatever it is. That is what it means. Yeah, that is what it means, ongoing support to maintain recovery. Not looking at them and saying, ati umeenda treatment, wacha tuone. Si wewe tu, wewe tu. Then the other downside is supervisors who somebody is back, but they don't give them work. Now you can see where the stigma comes in. You call them Malevi. Now that they are on the path to recovery, what do you do with Kalewa? Yeah? What do you do with Kalewa, the name? Yeah? What do you do with that? You see, now that becomes a challenge. Yeah? So I will now take you to some of the frequently asked questions. And if I don't cover a question that you have in mind or one that you keep asking yourself, please put it in the chat or in the Q&A so that we address it. So the first one that I've even mentioned in part is alcoholism a disease and can it be inherited? Yeah. So alcoholism, or just talk of addiction, is a chronic relapsing brain disease. It is progressive. Even the cause is predictable. You don't just wake up today, start using today, and you are dependent. There are steps to getting there. But one of the things that you see in the people is craving. And if you're here, ask yourself, do I have a compulsion to drink? Craving. That if I get permission, the first thing that I'm going to do, you know, the way you crave for water is the way somebody's craving for a drink. That is loss of control. Where's the limit? You cannot say, I'm just going to take a glass. The moment you start, you can't stop. So now look at when you are going to have alcohol in workplace events. You have somebody with a thirst for it, and when they start, they can't stop. And then eventually they have a physical dependence that if they don't take, they end up with withdrawal symptoms. They are shaking, they are uncomfortable, they are disorganized, they are anxious. Yeah, they can't just do anything. But the moment they take, now they're okay. Yeah, and then you begin to say, oh, najua fulani is a good worker. In fact, akisha kunywa ako sawa. You're not helping that person. Yeah, because eventually they will die, and then who will do that? Then there is the aspect of tolerance. Ile glass moja, chupa moja is never enough. You need more to achieve the same effect. That is a symptom of dependence. Then the other thing that we are usually asked, even as we say, we are talking about genetic. There is actually a genetic factor. This has been studied. There are genes that are partially responsible for this. So it tends to run in families. And that is why some families say, unajua sisi ni walevi. Nikiangalia tu sisi ni walevi, nafikiri tulirogwa na inaonekana mrogi alipotea. There's a genetic component of it. However, even if it runs in your family, but you never touch it, you can't become an alcoholic. So that means that besides running in the families, there is the environmental factor, the influence of friends and peers. Remember, kwani wewe ni kuku, unaingia pamoja na kuku, ndio unaenda nyumbani mapema. Wewe ndio uko on duty. Now you see where the environmental factors begin. Then there is stress at the workplace. This supervisor who gives me work now and is not giving me time to do the work. Micromanagement. I am working away from family. So you see now environmental factors come in. Then the ease of access to alcohol. You know, it is available, including the ones you can order. And in some institutions that we have trained, they even have, if your side hustle is some wines and spirits, then you begin to see your co-workers as customers. Uko nayo kwa boot. And now you begin to sell because these are customers. Now you see how environmental factors actually contribute. If I cannot stop. Yeah. The other question that people ask is, so what is the point of sending people to rehabilitation when they are going to relapse? Yeah. So does treatment work? In fact, some organizations say we've taken so many people. Does treatment really work? Treatment is possible. It is not curable, but it is treatable with therapy, medication, or both. And remember, this is done by the people who know. Relapse is part of the journey. It's part of the journey. Just think of on the road, you have bumps. These are the bumps on the road. Because remember, why we say it is not even curable, the brain does not forget. Yeah? The brain does not forget the people you drank with, the places. Yeah? You know, those are some of the things that affect the people. And therefore, even if they relapse or they lapse, recovery is still possible. That is why you find people in recovery continue to tell their recovery story. They continue to tell their recovery story because it is a day at a time. So that even when they fall, it doesn't mean that it is their fate. They pick themselves up, get professional help, right? So it does. Treatment does work. The other question we get is, all right, when I look at my family, my grandfather has been drinking, has been smoking bangi, tobacco for a long time, and he's still there. So what are you saying? So why doesn't everyone who tries a substance and even continue become addicted? I've already mentioned about the genetic risk, but we also have individual differences. So because of individual differences, you find that other people may not progress to addiction. And I've also mentioned environmental factors. So when you combine this, it's going to shape the addiction risk. So just briefly, what is it that is happening? They are influential factors. The one in red you can see are personal characteristics. The one in green are environmental characteristics. And the one in yellow are pharmacological. That substance you're using, what is it that is in it that continues to drive you to use? So you can see there are those who initiate use. If you look at the part for initiate use, when there is initiate use, personal, yeah, personal is there. The red ones, initiate, it is small. But environmental are very big there because of your peers, availability, accessibility, and all those. Yeah? And the ones who are telling you, a man must drink. And if you are drinking soda, they start bullying you. Ebu mletee soda na mkate crate moja. You know, those are environmental factors. So there are those who try and say, I almost died from it. And therefore they discontinue use. So from their experience, no matter what you bring, they have discontinued use. But there are those ones who continue using. So now you can see personal characteristics are becoming bigger. Environmental is still there, but now the pharmacological bit. Yeah. What is it in the drug? Now you can see continued use. How frequent are you using it? Are you using multiple substances? Because the other issue is there are those who chew mirror and they are using prescription drugs. There's that one who is drinking and they are smoking. They are, those combinations. And then, are you drinking it or are you injecting? Yeah. Are you inhaling? So the varied administration, because again, smoking is the fastest way to get the drug into your system. It just takes about 8 seconds. Drinking may take longer. But again, how frequent are you? So you can see the continued use. For some unexplained reason, there are those who don't experience problems. Yeah. But there are those who develop problems which have to do with health. Yeah. Has to do with emotional, psychological, social that we have already talked about. So don't hang on to my grandfather. Ask yourself, the peers of your grandfather who are drinking or smoking, how many of them are still alive? Because your grandfather may be what we call the outlier. because that is the one, that is it. Yeah. And then you don't say sisi tulirogwa, because you can see this is how it's substance abuse. This is a process. Yeah. Urogi, I don't know where Urogi comes in, but I know they're also cultural. When it comes to treatment, the cultural factors must also be addressed. Yeah. Yes. The other question is, who should an employee talk to if they need help at the workplace in relation to? What are your pathways? As an institution, what are your pathways? Because we have these three ways. Through sensitization like this, if it is done in your workplace, an employee can actually seek help on their own, because you've made them know that in the EAP there is counseling. You have also demystified counseling. Your service provider has talked about what psychiatric um, services are they providing and so on. So the employee can seek help on their own. The peers, the co-workers, family members, if the wife, by the time a wife reports to the workplace, because most of the time it's the wife, you hardly find a husband coming to say, huyo mama akipata tu salary. Huh? You don't see her until it is over. By the time the wife comes to the workplace, consider it as a referral. HR, consider it as a referral. They have tried to bear with it, but now they are seeking help. That is called informal referral. Peers, and therefore, remember we talked of peer support. You are the one who can, you can see that this person has a problem. Because when I have a problem, I'm probably the last person to know that I have a problem. And that is why co-workers play a very big role. As a supervisor, identify the at-risk employees and refer. It means even you need to know which EAP services, and then within the organization, who should I send this person to? Sometimes, because the HR deals with the good, the bad, and the ugly, if you send them to the HR, they may not want to go. So within the HR department, who is dealing with welfare issues? So that if you are the one who normally uses the big stick, nobody will trust you with coming. Yeah, even though they recognize that they have a problem, they may not come to you because of the kind of work that you do. Now, in your policy, what does your policy say? And every institution needs to have a committee, yeah, who then coordinates all these workplace substance use efforts. Because then, from your perspective or within your policy, says that this is what we do. Yeah, and we discussed this during training. The HR department, policy enforcement, documentation, and support. What are you documenting? Yeah. And there should be separate documentation between my personal issues and those ones. So you don't begin. I still recognize that the HR policy still recognizes substance use as an indiscipline issue. But you must have an intervention before you begin with disciplinary. And that is why HR is also part of the Prevention and Management Committee. So how do you enforce this? What does the policy say? So you see, the policy needs to indicate that. Now, the staff welfare, and this includes even institutions that have haki yetu. Those haki yetu people are called what? The haki yetu. Yeah, the ones who are in the Kupet and Kudeha, that kind of people. They also play a role, and they need to be part of. You need a representative in that committee. The staff welfare, that person who is providing support, not the one who uses the big stick. Yeah, because then you become a barrier. All right, the other question. So if the supervisor is the one, so what do we do? Do we go drinking together? Yeah. Remember, those supervisors also have a supervisor. And what does your policy say? because it applies. You will find it applies. Remember, in the universal, we said the whole institution. It applies to everyone. So the question you should be asking yourself, does it matter? Who is this? What is the institution's reporting mechanisms? Because if the supervisor also has a supervisor, how are we addressing this? Is there a way we can do anonymous reporting? Yeah. So those are the things that then you ask yourself. So if that is the case, and this is also something that is dealt with in the supervisor training, because you have a role if you are the problem. All right. So what additional questions do you have? Let me look at the chat. Let me look at the chat if there are questions, because I have given you the frequently asked questions. Yeah. I can see in a situation where a colleague frequently arrives at work intoxicated, what is the recommended protocol for referral to treatment facilities? Elizabeth Mule, you cannot do the diagnosis, because if in your mind you're already saying this person needs to go to a treatment facility, it means you have already done the diagnosis. Yeah, you've already done the diagnosis. In your policy, it also needs to be clear, because then is it who is dealing with this person? Yeah, is it the supervisor? And I know supervisors like to send these things to the HR so that what are HR to deal with it? It's because supervisors, some of them want to remain as the good guy. As the good guy, I'm not reporting you. So let the HR deal with it. After all, the HR deals with the good, the bad, and the ugly. That is not helpful. What does your policy say? Yeah, that is something that is very key, because you cannot decide that the person needs to go to a treatment facility. Remember, I've already talked of inpatient and outpatient. It is only from assessment that you would be able to do. So let me deal with the ones who are in the chat before I can ask. Yes, I can see Rita has also responded to them. Steve Munya is saying we're doing a good job, but when it comes to enforcement, to me, you need more powers, especially licensing of alcoholic outlets. Now, remember, licensing of outlets is a county function. And that is why I mentioned that the problem is, instead of regulation, sometimes what you have is revenue. So if the county is looking at revenue um, instead of regulation, then we end up with a problem. The 300-meter rule has been violated. Sale of alcohol in residential areas activates the usage. Yes. So remember why I talked about multi-agency approach. Because if you are the one licensing and you're just opening in as many places as possible, then we have a cat and mouse kind of issue. Yeah. And of course, the enforcement is also, particularly when it comes to reports that are made, then we address that. Let me see if you have clients who work in manufacturing and they are paid based on targets met during, how can you help clients to be able to come for therapy during working hours when need be? Now, Irene Mumo, remember why I said that every institution needs to have their own survey, so that you see which, in as much as you are doing the universal, there is the group that is most at risk. Yeah. So how do you identify? How do you identify? It is only through your survey that you'll be able to pick the ones who are most at risk, and then from there, what is the referral pathway? Yeah. What is the referral pathway? Because if it is in the policy, you need to have space. Remember, that's why we say even the ones who are at work how do you give them time so that they can be able to go for therapy? Yes, so it needs to be in the policy, Irene. It needs to be in the policy because that policy is the evidence. Benedict says we need internal baseline. Yes, you need. Yes, you need. Yeah. So you are asking about ethical clearance. Now, even when you want to do internal, we have our research department. We have a research department. So it means that you can also reach out to them for support so that you see how do you go about it. Ekitela is asking if substance use is a disability. Disability to what? To what extent? Because when you talk of substance use can actually result in disability. Yeah. And so when you have the disability, that becomes a different thing. Remember the people who are drinking, hata mukizima taa tutaendelea kukunywa, but the person has actually gone blind. So you see the blindness is what becomes the disability. Yeah. But you cannot say that substance use is a disability in itself, right? So the consequences that come with that, just like when you have a drunk driver who then causes an accident and somebody ends up with disability. So you see, it's not the substance use itself that is the disability. How do we deal with an officer who keeps on relapsing? Mary Nuvayo, remember the journey has many bumps. There are ripples and there are huge bumps. But what does your policy say with regard to this? Because in the policy, then remember, in the HR policy, it's still a disciplinary issue also. So for how long are you going to keep this person? Yeah. In the policy, it needs to be there. So I say, these are the number of chances that somebody is being given, right? So you will not just be able to sit back and say, unajua mimi niko na shida. Hata nakada walisema addiction is a disease. Thank you. Rita has already provided even the email for research. The issue of youth at workplace not delivering, is it a parental upbringing? Mary Kabau, it may be a parental upbringing, but now that person finds himself or herself in the workplace. And that is why we have the family-based intervention, so that we can also intervene at the parental level. And that is what we talked about on Friday. If you missed, you may look for the recording so that you are able to see what did we say. So, and sometimes it is a parental upbringing because sometimes even the job has been looked for by the parent. So you are there, everything is easy for the person. They didn't even work for it. Yeah. So the job has been parent, whether whichever means that people used to get jobs, they've got the job for the person, they just sit back because now they can come and occupy the workplace. But remember, I said when you have a youthful workforce and also lack of mentorship, that also becomes an issue, right? Let me see if there is another question. Huh? If the case, Edward is asking if this is the case, can they qualify for a disability assessment? I think I've already responded that substance use itself is not the disability. Yeah, because we are talking about a mental chronic condition. Yeah, chronic condition, just like you have diabetes, just like you have what else? Hypertension. Those are part of chronic conditions. Do you get assessed? Do you get a certificate because you have diabetes or you have hypertension? Yeah, think about it as as a chronic condition. Yes, there will be recordings that has already been out from your experience. That is Peter Hagono. What practical strategies does Nakara recommend for supporting at-risk students? Now, remember we've said all these are part of what is within the workplace. And if you are in a setting that has employees and has students, we still have the same. You need to have universal. So there is education for students. You need to have the selective. Out of your students, which ones, even from the work or the training that they have, which ones are most at risk? So what are the strategies? As you can see, we've talked of confidential screening so that at the earliest opportunity, then they can receive the help. I am taking it for granted that you must be having the dean, you have chaplaincy, and you have, that set of group should be able to take care of the student. Rosemary Omondi, we will share the recording, not the slides. All right? Yes. So,
Dr. Maua,
those were, yes,
there is a Mr. Victor also who really has a burning question. We had told him he
yes,
could raise his hand when you're done. So I don't know if he's around. He
yes.
raises his hand.
Okay. Yes, I'm looking at the ones on the chat, then I will come to the ones who have raised up their hands. Yeah, thank you. All right. Let me see if there's any other question. Somebody is asking if NACADA accepts the interns. Yes, under the public service. Public service is the one who sends interns. Okay. So I can see there are no questions. Victor also has raised up his hand. Please go ahead, Victor. Hmm? Victor also has the hand raised. And anybody who had raised their hand, this is the time that we are giving you an opportunity. All right, so it looks like there's no one talking. So now let
Dr.
me
Dr.
go.
Maua, Dr.
Yes.
Maua, also
Yes.
Lynn Weche. Lynn Weche, if she's here, please raise your question now. Speak.
Yes. Unmute and speak.
Lynn Weche, please.
The hands are raised, but they are not unmuting. I hope it's
Okay.
not. I hope it's not on our side. If you
Yeah.
if you can't, please indicate in the chat if you have a problem with unmuting. Yes. Yes, Rita.
Okay, there was also a question that I didn't get to answer in the Q&A. There's a lady, someone who asked about functional addicts, and please do not call them addicts. They are persons suffering from substance use disorders. So she's asking that they are the best employees. So what can you advise on that one?
And
And I
sorry,
think, and I, yeah.
before you advise, the others have said they are not able to unmute. So if you could also Rita unmute them as Dr. Maua is answering.
Yes. So remember, I mentioned the issue that such people usually don't get help. Remember, if you are dependent, it means that whatever substance you are using has already taken over you, and therefore you have a new normal. You see, those of us who are not using are normal. But as you continue to use so that you can't function without the substance, you actually have a new normal. It doesn't mean that that person does not need help, because for some reason we look at the person, but we don't understand that what is it that is also happening internally. Could the person also be having another mental health disorder so that they are using the substance to cope? Yeah. And then the day they die, do you say he was a good worker, but he died from alcoholism? What did you do when that person? So remember from assessment, what kind of help can this person get? Yeah. So many times we are actually asked about this functional alcoholic, because after I have taken, including if I have a headache and I've taken a painkiller, remember it numbs the pain. It doesn't deal with whatever it was. Then now I can continue to work because the pain is numbed. But if I don't address the underlying issue, then what happens? I will keep taking painkillers. It reaches a point, this painkiller is not working. I upgrade, I need a stronger and a stronger one. So you see, you are actually not helping the person. So the person still needs help if we understand. Because that's why I said what you see in the case of drug use is not what you get, because there could be other issues that are there. All right, so I hope now the lean and the ones who have raised their hand.
Dr. Mawa, Steve is trying to unmute them. I've tried, it's not possible. Steve is working on the same, so you can just finish the remaining part. Then once he's done, we can give them a chance, kindly.
Okay. All right, so that is being done. What is in store? I have already mentioned this. You need a committee, those ADA committees, and we have NACADA-led trainings that are there. The next level of people, like I've mentioned, managers and supervisors are enablers. Yeah, they are enablers when it comes to now you have completely removed my presentation. Sharing is not found. Now you have even disabled me. I have also been. Okay, now let me just finish and then we'll give a chance to those. Yes, so I was saying we have training for committees. So if you don't have a committee, you need to have one. Yeah. We have trainings, both virtual and in person, meaning you can organize as an institution so that you can be trained. If you are interested in the trainings, you contact us in the email provided. Managers and supervisors, as we have seen, are enablers. So that we also have a training for that. The student welfare staff, we also have a training. Yeah. So for the committees, it is 5 days in person. For managers and supervisors, it is 3 days because you are a busy lot. The student welfare, it is also 3 days. Then we have the one for peer educators, for staff, and also students. Now, it is progressive. It is progressive. You need to start with the committee because the committee, there is some work to do with regard to policy and also the surveys before you can have a supervisor training. The student welfare, the chaplains are those who deal with them. So there are trainings, there are sensitizations. And from this, we are also saying the EAP supported sessions and prevention, early identification and referral. Those are some of the things that we have done. So from our end, what is it that is critical is the trainings and the sensitizations. Can be done online, can be done in person, depending on what you would want to have. And so as I finish, what are my parting shots? Prevention is everyone's responsibility. I hope you can see it is shared across the leadership, the staff, support system, including family. The other thing is we must work towards a healthy work environment for us to reduce risk. We need a positive culture, clear expectations, and the focus is on well-being. Remember, this is where we spend the longest times of our lives. Then the other thing is early identification. It makes a difference. It makes a difference. Don't wait until you say, this person cannot do without alcohol. And the moment they have taken, they are good workers. Early intervention can prevent harm, and also we can retain those who are productive. Because remember, even in the workplace, you are taken for training. So if you have already expended so much money and effort in training this person, then you release them. It means you will need another person. Policy. We need clear and fair policies because that is when it builds trust. And therefore, We also provide those guidelines for developing the policies. It's available on our website. So when you build that, then you're going to support all these people who need help. Supervisors, you are the key gatekeepers. And when you are trained, you are able to spot the signs and also respond appropriately. And you're going to see when you get trained as a supervisor, the focus is not on identifying, say, Yule Mulevia Bekuja. How do we send him for treatment? Yeah, that you will find we have better ways. Support works better than punishment. Let us not think about punishment and then referral, care, EAP support, that one that you are already providing. Please let people know. Let us educate on stigma, because stigma is the barrier to actually people getting help. Going for counseling is not a weakness. It's not a weakness. It's actually a strength. Being able to say, I need help is actually a strength. And then prevention also protects productivity. You're going to have fewer accidents, absenteeism, and the costs that have to do with this. Because if you're not doing your work, somebody else is doing it. So all these contribute. And that brings me to the end. Please follow us. Follow us at Nakada Kenya, whether it is on Instagram, on Facebook, on X. We also have a YouTube channel. This is recorded. You will receive. If you signed up, you're going to receive. So I will stop sharing so that we hear from, I hope now. Let me start with Victor. Victor, I hope you can now unmute. Yep.
Maybe you can confirm you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and thank you for the presentation. It's been very insightful. I have two questions. My first question, is there an interagency working relationship between NACADA and the Counselors and Psychologists Board? Because when we focus on that area of care and support, I have noted with a lot of concern that a number of rehabs do employ people who I'm not so sure they are counselors and psychologists, and if they are, I'm not so sure if they are licensed by the Counselors and Psychologists Board. Is there a way you're working together so that you're able to ensure that those people who are employed are actually professionals? And I'm saying this because there has been an upsurge on those people with lived experiences being the ones that are offering management in those rehab spaces. So that now falls goes to the second question. We have noted with a lot of concern also there is an increase in the number of relapse cases. And that now is making the public to lose confidence in rehabilitation services because they are incurring a lot of costs, relatively 250,000 and above. But after a few months, their loved ones are relapsing. Yes, I know it is part of their control, but my concern is, are you ensuring that those people who are employed in those rehabs are facilitated and paid well? Because this is in that area of standard, and I was very keen when you were talking about the issue of standard. Then lastly, there was a presidential directive on the first day of January this month, and the motivation was behind that directive was the upsurge of alcohol and substance use, not only in the public service but also in the country, and how that now is resulting to an issue in terms of security. This resulted to the Interior Ministry.
Now you also need to make it short so that we allow others. Victor.
Okay, so this has been taken up by the Interior Ministry, and I believe the way they are coordinating might not be the best. So what is the role of NACADA in that directive, and are you guys giving registered and licensed counselors and psychologists an opportunity to participate even as you influence policies within that directive that was given by the president. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. I will take the questions and I will give Dr. Orlando to respond to Victor's concerns. Let me hear from Lynn.
Thank you so much, Daktari. I have really enjoyed today's session. Mine is sort of similar to Victor's. In summary, it is what is the role of NACADA? I'm a therapist. And as per your presentation, you had the personal, environmental, and pharmacological issues. So in therapy, we probably focus on the personal issues, but then we send them out back into the environment. And more often, we find that the stressors that people are facing that cause to substance use are environmental, whether it is workplace, whether it is taxation, whether it is unemployment, whether it is a political environment, etc. But as NACADA, you have access to all of this information and research. So my question is, what is your role then in advocating for changes in the greater environment? And how then can we as psychologists or medics or mental health professionals piggyback and help to champion that, as opposed to, I guess, putting it back on the individual?
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Lillian?
Yes, I'm asking. Yes, just like the last two, if the normal therapists that we take to them our mental issues especially, personal, family issues, and all, if they can also, they are trained, if there's a specific training required to handle an alcoholic, it's the same way they handle us, they can also handle an alcoholic automatically. I don't know if there are specific trained alcoholic handlers. And then I was also asking there in the question answer, whether you have pursued the angle of witchcraft as NACADA. Because you said kuna ile ya tumerogwa familia yetu sisi wote, but there's also another one of business places of entertainment, places of the Chang'aa dance, the big places like, you know, the ones we go to dance in towns, I won't say names. They have been taught or said, or the small walk-ins and buy and get out, buy and drink, the small pubs, mtaani, they have been said to sort of use manipulation, witchcraft. So that when you get that 50 bob, you're only thinking of running there. When you get 100,000, you're thinking of going back there. You spend all the money, you don't have it within a week, within a day. So because some things even now transcend the normal, even if you say we treat them, even if you say we give them small doses, even if you say we pray over them, some things are not, even if you say they were abused, not hugged when they were babies, they were raped, I don't know, they are unemployed. Some things go beyond the normal. And even wamama wa Chang'aa wamepatikana wanaweka paraphernalia in the drums. Kalovo, Chang'aa, there in the slums, Ushago, wanaweka vitu ndani, and it's said to bring the customers back and forth. I don't know if NACADA has ever been into that. Thank you.
Thank you for your interesting questions. In fact, people are just laughing at the questions. I will give Dr. Orlando to answer, but Lillian, remember that in treatment, we look at the bio, psycho, social, spiritual, cultural, and then what else? Yeah. Even techno now needs to be part of it. So you see, at individual level, if you leave out the cultural or you leave out the spiritual bit of it, then it's you are actually not helping the person. Yeah. So let me give Dr. Orlando, who is a clinical psychologist. She'll be able to, and also the director in charge of public education and advocacy department, so that she also takes us through the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Maua. I'll start with Victor's question. So yes, Victor, we collaborate with the different boards, not only for the counselors and psychologists. We also work with KMPDC. We also work with the psychiatrists. Now, the people you're saying are working in the rehabs and are in recovery. We have a training for them. It is called recovery coaching. So they are not quacks. Unless you go to a rehab where there is a quack, then you can let us know. But when you're carrying out our inspection, we confirm that they have been trained. For the counselors who are working in the field, I'll combine that with the question that was asked by Lynn Weche. You might be a counselor or a psychologist, but you are not an addiction specialist. Allow me to repeat that. You might be a counselor or a psychologist, but not an addiction specialist. Addiction is a specialty field. We have trainings for that, for handling adults, for handling children, for handling adolescents, for handling women. We actually have specific trainings for that. So please check out the NACADA website. Under trainings, you'll be able to see the training that you need to undertake to support our people. Otherwise, you'll be talking about relapse all the time. Still looking at Victor, the increase of relapse, yes, that is there. We're actually trying to address that. But if you also look at research, our relapse rates are not as high as for diabetes and hypertension. Research is showing that our relapse rates are not the best, but they're not the worst. Just that for diabetes and hypertension, you react immediately. For alcoholism or other drugs, you blame the person. So the same way after treatment for diabetes, you're told your family to support you to get your dosage on time, to support you with your food. The same you're asking for families of people suffering from alcohol and use disorders. If you don't support them, they will relapse. And that is not on the facility. It is on the family and the individual. In terms of payment of staff, that is beyond our mandate. You will note that rehabs charge differently, so do hospitals. And hospitals don't pay their staff the same. So rehabs also don't pay their staff the same. If you go to a high-paying rehab, then you'll realize the salaries or wages that the staff are getting are also high. If you take them to government facilities, then they're in a job group as per government directives and they're taken care of. Your last question on the presidential directive and that the Interior Ministry has taken over. Of notice that NACADA is under the Ministry of Interior. So NACADA is the one that has taken over. And Susan, you will maybe answer the rest, but allow me to just answer, to mention something about witchcraft. Okay, I don't know about what they put, but I know they put so many things, including women's sanitary towels. But of notice that the African Union and the UNODC are recognizing traditional healers, not witch doctors, eh? Unajua ule wa nyumbani, ile dawa ya matawi and leaves that you're using, marubaini and the rest. They're being recognized by UNODC and African Union for treatment. So if you know your villager who's in this field, the global world is looking for them. They're actually being registered for training and also for protection. So that if you're an expert, let's preserve your expertise. Thank you. Yes, herbalist. Somebody has given the right word. Yes, herbalist. Let them be registered so that they're recognized internationally and they're trained to preserve what they have learned from their great-great-grandparents, and also so that the rest of us can access that medication without being told tumeenda kwa waganga. Thank you, and back to you, Dr. Maua.
Thank you, and thank you for that. I think you have covered all the questions because they were around the role of NACADA. And just to remind you, NACADA is actually under the Ministry of Interior. Yeah, that is our parent ministry. So then you understand the correlation between what we do and the fact that there is the security. You know, there is crime, drugs and crime work together, right? Okay, I can see Jeremy. Jeremy, please unmute and speak.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Susan, for that wonderful presentation and the key takeaways. So I'm seeing a lot of people asking which WhatsApp group. Maybe I can paste the link with your permission, Daktari.
Yes, please.
All right. So just to bring those who are joining us for the first time, this is the second day of the National Prevention Week, and we are currently taking over the digital streets to share on themed-based prevention. So for today, we are doing workplace, and we just want to encourage you as individuals to take your key takeaways, the things that you've learned today, and post it on your social media platforms. And if you join the group later on, you'll be able to access some of the posters that we have, and also key messaging and who to tag, and so that we can continue the conversation on the social media spaces, right? And let me see. Yes. So kindly join the WhatsApp group, and we look forward to seeing you on Twitter. We look forward to seeing you on Instagram, on LinkedIn. Feel free to tag NACADA, and also feel free to share whatever you've posted on the WhatsApp group. Thank you, Dr. Susan. Back to you.
Thank you, Jeremy, for bringing that important part of why we are doing this. As she has mentioned, this is the week that we are actually heightening activities on bringing out prevention. We want to celebrate sobriety. We want to celebrate those who have stopped using. We want to celebrate that young person who is not using, so that the focus is not just always on the ones who are using, because it's the ones who are using who are likely to go and start using. Because remember, the young people have something called FOMO, the fear of missing out. Fear of missing out. Yeah. So with the FOMO, if the focus is on people who are using, hata mimi nataka, so that I can be part of the people who are. So I know some of you may not be on X, but follow us on X, on Facebook, and so on. That is why Jeremy has mentioned that there is a WhatsApp. She has actually put the link. The purpose of that is so that those who are on the X and the Facebook can actually post them back there. It is a forum for educating. We are educating each other during this period. Yeah. And then once it is done, we already have your emails. Yeah, we already have the emails. So again, you don't need to post the emails on the chat. We are going to send you a recording. We will let you know when they are trainings. Yeah, we let you know when they are trainings, because we have trainings on the universal prevention curriculum, like the ones that I had mentioned. Now, for the psychologists and other people who are in this field, as Dr. Lando has mentioned, addiction is a specialist area. We have the Universal Treatment Curriculum Series, which we are also offering. Remember, to offer, we need to mobilize so that we have a group of people who can then be trained. Because sometimes you request as one person, but you can't be trained as one person. Yeah, so that is something that is also there. Then she has also mentioned the universal recovery coach training, so that your lived experience is not a training. Yes. There's a friend of mine who usually says, so why don't you have, if I have a problem with my tooth and I remove it, yeah, it has been extracted. I have a lived experience of losing a tooth. Why am I not a dentist? Yeah. So just because you have used and stopped does not qualify you as a specialist. You need to have the recommended training, just like criminals. Don't go and start telling people, I am a recovered and I am a criminal in recovery. Yes, just think about that. And then lastly, I want to give Reverend Charles Musambai. Please make it short so that we can also finish. The link has been reposted. Hey. Some people are not seeing the link. Yes, Reverend.
Thank you, Daktari. Thank you, Daktari, for your presentation, and I'm so grateful for this. This is the second training from the previous one. A quick one because time is spent. One, what is Nakata doing with relating with other institutions like the counselors and psychologists, Kenya Counselor Psychologists Association, those associations that host counselors, especially in drug and substance abuse in institutions? And the second one, does Nakata has a place for religious organizations or churches as in this manners of drug and substance abuse, especially institutions? This arises because you realize some parents, we are living in times where exorcism, deliverance, you find this is, I'm a trained psychologist, and you find young people, family members, fathers and mothers, others are just are undergoing this drug and substance abuse, but you find parents pushing it to spirituality. Where is there like a bridge where Nakada is bridging between now the facing this madness in institution and also where the ministers themselves, I'm talking in my capacity as a reverend and ordained minister, and you find one time I was watching in one of our national television, and one minister said, "Pombe si mbaya." And it really caught me, and I was watching with my son, I was watching with my wife. I had to change the channel. So the boy came later and asked me, "Daddy, see, Pastor Flani alisema pombe si mbaya. What are we doing as Nakada? Because this institution of spirituality and religious, it's really one of the centers that people are gaining a lot of trust. How can we bring on board the religious leaders and the institutions so that we can work through and leverage the kind of management of drug and substance abuse?" Thank you so much for your presentation.
All right, thank you, Reverend. And the lady in charge, if you look at that is Judith Twala, has already responded that Nakada works in collaboration with both state and non-state factors, and religious institutions are part and a very critical partner. In fact, right now we are actively engaged with religious institutions. And the family-based prevention interventions is very core. In fact, most of the people who have actually been trained are people who are in with the religious institutions. So those are very critical. And so look out for when we actually have this. We are very, very much engaged with the religious institutions. And so if you missed, then probably it's a time. This sensitization is a short one. Yeah. Like you're saying, time is already running out, but it is good to actually answer people's questions because then the conversation even continues on the WhatsApp. But we have trainings which are targeting this group of people. If you have not been reached, then which county, you could probably even indicate on the chat or engage with us even on the WhatsApp, so that we continue to answer those questions. But just remember that they are a critical part of what we are doing. Right. David Kungu, if you can use less than a minute. David Kungu, because we have come to the end and David is not unmuting, he's put the hat down. So thank you so much, everyone. Some people keep out, how do you engage you and WhatsApp? Now, what do you want us to do with you? If you are not on social media, you are not on WhatsApp, where do you want us to find you? You must be somewhere. Be somewhere where you can be found. Because if I can see Roswitha or Charlie kindly share Friday training for those who are unable to join. If you registered for it, you must have received the recording by now, right? But if you have not received, write to training, that email that we had given, training@nakada.go.ke and say that you have not received, so that it is done. Now, moving from here, remember the conversation continues on our socials and on the WhatsApp. And because Jeremy is in charge, I can see she has raised her hand. Let us hear from her. Go right ahead, Jeremy.
Sorry, I was also mentioning that the link for the previous training is also on the WhatsApp group, and I've posted the hashtags for the campaign that we're currently running. They are also in the chat. Yeah, thank you. Sorry.
Thank you so much. So, wazee, kama ujui hashtag ni nini, hashtag, you will see has National Prevention Week and so on. I know they are found in this workplace training. So anyway, let us engage in those so that we continue the conversation. Yeah, you know, we've even come down to WhatsApp. So if you're not on WhatsApp, we don't know where we can get you. Yeah, because now conversation from here, we are moving to X, we are moving to Instagram, but most of it is on X, Instagram, LinkedIn, not much, Facebook. So please engage, ask questions, because this webinar has come to an end, and we are going to share with you the recording so that you are able to continue this conversation. Remember, we've said trainings are available, sensitizations are available, and we can answer all those questions in this setting, right? So thank you so much, everyone, for creating time and attending this session. We were over almost 500, and we do not take it for granted.